Yes, we all hope the rain does stay away. Welcome back to our live at Wimbledon interactive studio coverage here. I'm Annabel Croft alongside the 7-time Grand Slam champion Mats Wilander, and of course I'm delighted to welcome into our studio Leander Paes, holder of 15 Grand Slam doubles titles and of course Wimbledon as well. Great to have you with us.
Thank
and you won today with Martina Hingis. You're into the quarterfinals. How are you enjoying Wimbledon so far?
Well, it's just fantastic. I'm actually loving the view you guys have from around here. It's just a
It's
magical view over court 18. It's been a really fun Wimbledon so far because the weather's been great so far. In fact, even though we got a few showers today, it's a welcome change. It makes us feel like we've always felt at Wimbledon.
Yeah. When I look at your CV, it's so incredible, Leander. It's difficult to know where to start, but just tell us first of all your earliest memories of Wimbledon.
You're too kind. My first year here was in 1989. I came in as a little Indian boy from Calcutta, and I had to earn my badge in the juniors. And I played the qualifying and qualified, and then that was the first year I kind of believed that I could come and play at Wimbledon. When you grow up at the South Club in Calcutta and you work hard to get to this level, you're a little overawed the first year you come. You hear of the great players like Mats, you hear of the great players like yourself who've been up there.
I'm definitely not in that category.
And you basically look at the winner's board and you're like, do I really belong? And then over the first couple years, you kind of find your feet, you find yourself around there, and then I worked very, very hard for the 1990 junior singles title here, and I played on the old court number 3, and that was a bit of a nerve-wracking final, and then the rest was just history. Yeah,
and of course you can't have had too many grass courts where you grew up, so grass must have been quite an alien surface to you.
We actually had more grass courts than we had European clay.
How interesting.
European clay courts had little pebbles in them. So you were kind of slip-sliding and kind of churning your wheels in one spot.
Wow, so did you grow up on grass then?
I did grow up on grass, and that's why my old Eastern forehand, I had to kind of learn to switch it over. In fact, Mats was one of the players I learned a lot from because the way he played, his style of playing, like that two-handed backhand that he had, in the 87 final in the US Open, you came with something new with the slice one-handed backhand. And that kind of taught me that my Eastern forehand that I had to switch over a little bit to a Western forehand. So I felt like if great players like him could actually reinvent themselves, that's what I've tried to do for the last 26 years.
Right, amazing. I was going to say, I'm going to start the other side of the spectrum, which is you've been to 6 Olympics, and you are already qualified to go to 2016 in Rio. That's 7 Olympics.
That's amazing.
Please, can somebody send in on social media if they know of any Olympians that have been to more Olympics than 7?
I know.
Because 7 is unbelievable.
Quite incredible.
And it's not shooting a pistol or a gun. This is an athletic sport tennis. So I would say that this might be a record, Leander. I mean, it's unbelievable, really. I mean, would you ever have imagined that you would be into
Not a
tennis?
chance.
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
Can we call you the oldest player in Wimbledon or most experienced?
You get away with it.
Okay, I get away with it. No, but the experience that you have, it's very interesting because you've seen the change from natural gut to synthetic gut to lighter rackets.
Right.
Where are we going? What's happening in the next few years, next 10 years?
Well, in the last 8 months, we've seen the tennis balls change a lot.
Okay, explain.
I always collect all the balls that I win a Grand Slam with. So I'll collect maybe 5 cans of the winning balls from the final. And I weighed up the cans from this year's Australian Open mixed doubles final that I played compared to last year's, compared to the years before. And the balls have changed a lot right now, Mats. They've become bigger and heavier.
Right.
So there's a lot more pressure in it, which means that not only we need more racket head speed in the racket, but we've got to use different strings. The strings have to give us a little more of a trampoline effect to give us more velocity behind the ball, as well as a lot more spin. If you see the way the game is going, it's going a lot with the baseline game. Back in the day, the guys from the baseline would be so solid. But now you look at Kevin Anderson, he's almost hitting Djokovic off the court from the baseline.
Right.
So 5 feet behind the baseline, they're hitting winners. If you look what Stan Wawrinka did in the finals of the French Open, he actually hit Djokovic off a court, off a clay court.
Amazing.
And how are they being able to be as consistent in that kind of play? Because in the past, if you're going to play that type of play, it's a bit more risky, but actually you won't be able to keep the ball going as long. But these guys are actually doing it consistently.
That's a great point. Because the strings have changed so much, and you got these new Luxolon strings, these new Babolat synthetic strings, you got the new head link strings.
So you can actually take a bigger
swing. They create a lot more spin. The spin means you have a lot more control. More spin, more control. And hence the boys can just swing out as hard as they want. You see the return game getting so much more an important part of the tennis game because of the spin that we're creating nowadays.
Yeah, and it's always made that third shot after the return of serve even more key, hasn't it?
That's right. It makes it harder for us serve and volleyers because you've got so much spin coming to you that you have to actually do more with it rather than when you looked at the Stefan Edbergs of the world, you look at the Boris Beckers of the world, you looked at go back even further, the John McEnroes of the world where they played half volleys with a straight racket. You can no more do that. You have to actually create your own spin at the net.
The other interesting thing was when Novak Djokovic and Kevin Anderson was going on today, they had their whole team down in the tunnel just before the entrance to court number 1. I know you don't have your whole team before you go on, but how much has that changed as well? The physical part where they're stronger, more flexible. I mean, we know how flexible Novak Djokovic is, and how hard are they working much harder these days than the players, let's say, or even when you started playing as a professional?
Mats, one of the things that I think that partly you're responsible for, Ivan Lendl was responsible for, is the athleticism in the game. I remember you in your Sergio Tacchini gear that your legs were huge.
Right, there
the
you
way
go.
you
It wasn't just tight shorts. I think the shorts are pretty tight too, Leander. Thank you, though. I'll take it. I'll take that as a compliment.
But the athleticism in the game changed in the late 80s, early 90s. If you look at a Boris Becker, what he brought here, today he's celebrating his 30th anniversary as the youngest Wimbledon champion at 17. You look at the athleticism that he brought in and the power he brought in. Today, a Kevin Anderson is an average height tennis player. And he's 6'7".
Frightening,
or somewhere thereabouts.
Right.
I think he might be even taller than that, actually.
I mean, I'm 5'10" on a good day.
Yes.
And back in the day when I started in 1989, I felt that I was an average height tennis player. Then it became Mats and Ivan Lendl, and they were like about you guys were about 6'1" or so. Then Boris Becker came in at 6'3". And now it's up to about 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah, well, look at
the
Karlovic
John Isners,
yesterday.
the Karloviches, you look at even someone like Pospisil.
Yes.
He's so tall, but he's so athletic. And coming back to your question again, it's the athleticism of the game that is a prerequisite.
Yes.
The margins between winning and losing now is very marginal. Whereas I found that back in the day, Mats, Lendl, Becker, Edberg, these boys were so far ahead of the rest of the pack that the top 5 you could bracket together. Nowadays it's going deeper and deeper in the draw.
Yeah, how have you had to adjust your training then in terms of doubles play? Because it must be very different to playing in singles. But how have you adjusted it as the game has moved on? Have you changed the drills that you're doing and obviously the time you spend on the athletic side of the game as well as the hitting?
I was very lucky because as a serve and volleyer, when I played singles and did well in the Olympics and did well on the tour, the serve and volleyer was very natural to the doubles. Whereas now I've had to reinvent myself, especially in the last 9 months, to work on my ground stroke game. That's one of the reasons that I actually love watching YouTube and videos of Mats returning, of Jimmy Connors returning. I love playing with Martina Hingis because she teaches me so much about the return game.
Oh, wow.
So for me, I've grown up with a lot of athleticism. I use my hands, I use my eyes, I use my legs that I could jump with. But really the technique of the game of tennis, I've never really been taught that. So today, this morning, I learned something new playing with Martina, and at 42 to learn new things is wonderful.
What did you learn?
She taught me that to actually hold my stomach muscles tight, to absorb the power of the serve, and then I could swing freely. Whereas if you just swing freely, the ball ricochets sometimes because there's too much movement.
Right.
And what she taught me was that to keep...
You're going wrong. No, but tighten up. But that's what we see with Andy Murray, Novak Djokovic, the way they return. Andy Murray has that massive split step towards the ball, and then it's just a short, compact swing. Agassi, I guess, was the first to return like that. But it's so where is it going? I mean, are we going with the Kevin Andersons? Are we going with the big servers, Nick Kyrgios, or is there still a chance for the Andy Murrays and Novak Djokovic in 10 years?
In 10 years would be a little far for my foresight, but in the next 5 years, I definitely seeing a wonderful mix in tennis. You're going to see the big servers always have an advantage. If someone's hitting service winners and aces every game, it's going to be impossible to beat them. On this very court on court 18, John Isner played the longest match at Wimbledon, and he just kept on serving aces against Mahut and service winners. So I think that is always going to be there. The big server is always going to have a big advantage because he's getting free points. But I also think, as you boys brought into the game, the returner serve is going to be the way that tennis is going to go. Serve and volley is a dying game. You find maybe 1 or 2 serve and volleyers out there. And even when they do come in, they're coming in off an amazing approach shot. Not back in the day where you could just slice a backhand slice and come in and hustle the opponent to hit a pass. Whereas nowadays, they're hitting big inside-out forehands coming in to put away the ball.
Yeah.
So I personally think that the return of serve game and the baseline game is going to evolve a lot.
Yeah.
How? With a lot of spin, with a lot of angles. I also think that there's going to be a little change where Nick Kyrgios, who's quite a talent, I mean, he's quite a character, he could sneak in every once in a while after his serve.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the players nowadays are realizing they're not getting free points from the baseline. So every once in a while, they'll hit a good shot, and when they outmaneuver their opponent, they'll just sneak in and hit a drive volley.
Right.
I think the drive volley will
it's
become another big
very-
thing of the game.
Yeah. I want to ask you about the return of serve that you said with Martina Hingis, because I was watching her when she was training Bencic the other day down in Eastbourne, and it was really interesting with Bencic because she actually stood returning serve with the racket face directly out in front with the flat face, a little bit similar to Martina actually. And we asked her and said, well, why do you do that? She said, well, Martina's helped me with the return, but if I have the racket flat, I lose a fraction of a second of time to get that racket back. So if it's like this, it's there or it's there, but it's out in front of her body, and she's saving time on that return of serve, which I thought was fascinating.
You give me something to work on.
There you go. There you go. And Martina's mom apparently is the one that taught Belinda Bencic.
That's right.
So you got,
You know, if you actually look at Martina Hingis, she'd be a fantastic coach.
Yeah,
The way
amazing coach.
her mental aptitude of the game is so amazing.
Yes.
That to go out there and just be around her and practice around her and be in that environment, you just learn so much, and that's the fun part of playing mixed doubles with her.
Yeah.
Great, Leander.
The other bit I wanted to ask you about was the technique on volleys, because Mats and I sit here discussing volley technique a lot, don't we? We enjoy sort of analysing quite a lot of the players out there, but I think both of us have felt for quite some time that over the years, because there's a missed generation of volleyers out there, that the technique on the younger players coming through is not what it used to be in the olden days, and the volley is a little bit flatter, would you say?
Yes.
As opposed to having that kind of cut on the ball that you've seen you've seen every
seen
generation.
everything.
But what is your thoughts on the modern
exactly
volleyer
right.
and the technique?
You're exactly right that the volley's changed a lot. A lot of modern day players believe the volley's played with the hands.
Yeah.
But to me, there are two very, very vital things about volleying. First is your eyes.
Yeah.
You've got less room between your opponent and yourself because you're at the net. So to pick up the ball first, whether it's a forehand or a backhand, like you said, the way on the return they're standing with the racket face forward, you have to stand with the racket face straight at 90 degrees in front of you.
Yeah.
Not behind, because then you're going to play
You'll
it
be
late,
late.
but keep it in front of you and loose, because when
Yeah.
your hands are relaxed, you actually then can react faster.
Ah.
So one is the eyes, to pick up the spin of the ball,
Yeah.
the speed of the ball, and the direction. Those are the three first things you have to do. Once that happens, a lot of coaches and a lot of people work on the eye-hand coordination. But I was lucky that I was born to parents who were Olympic champions themselves. They worked on my eye-feet coordination.
Ah.
The volley, the modern day volley, because the balls are so heavy, is played a lot with the legs. The minute you drive forward with your legs, then you use your hands for touch and feel.
Right.
Okay.
Whereas if you're just swinging with your hands,
Yeah.
one, there's more swing, and as Mats will tell you, the bigger the swing on the return or the
Yeah.
volley, the more chance for error.
Okay.
Two is that the more you use your body, the
Body.
bigger muscles for
Yeah.
power, then you have a lot more finesse. The wrist and the hands give you a lot more finesse. So the modern day volley, especially when you're playing it just on the service line,
Yeah.
is very difficult to hit a winner with this ball.
Yes.
So you're trying to create an error.
Yeah.
Which means, for me in particular, one of the shots I like is the inside-out backhand volley.
Yeah.
And I try and get the ball to skid in a U-shaped formation. So when I come in there, I just stick my elbow out a little and I just accelerate forward to get the ball to slide out.
Right.
And it's not that I'm actually going for a winner. Because I can get the ball to slide out, I pull the ball in from the lines, and then I get the ball to just move about 6 inches after the bounce. And generally that gets me either an easier volley or hopefully a mistake.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
wow,
right.
that is absolutely fascinating. Now, listen, we've just got some breaking news here. Novak Djokovic has just come through that fourth round match that was, of course, laid over from the night before due to bad light. My goodness, he was in all sorts of trouble out there, Leander. He was break points down in this fifth set, but he's just managed to close it out 7-5. So give us your thoughts on that particular win.
Oh, that's just a fantastic performance by both the players. I believe that Kevin had 2 break points on the Djokovic serve in that fifth set, and he had a chance on both those break points, I believe. And this is the fun thing about Djokovic, is that he's such an amazing tennis brain. I mean, we all know he has a huge entourage. We all know that he's got big coaching staff, fitness staff. His training and his lifestyle is so focused on being a champion.
Yeah.
What fascinates me about him is his recovery time.
Yeah.
What fascinates me about him is how he continues to improve. He's always looking at little things, his balance, the way his head is still on the baseline running, the way his transition is from the baseline to the net. He's one of the most complete players I've ever seen. And that being said, I'm sitting to one of the most complete players that's ever lived and played this sport.
Yeah, I agree with you. Do you think it will affect him, the fact that he's now not had a day off? All the other quarterfinalists would have had that time off, and he clearly wanted to play first out there today to get as much rest time as possible. But it kind of accumulated during the course of the French Open and definitely may have had an impact on what happened in that French Open final. But how do you feel about the fact that he's had to play back-to-back?
That's very astute of you to actually see these small finer details, and to win a Grand Slam, these final little things, I call them 1%, they all add up. And that is going to be really interesting to see how he recovers after today's match. I think his recovery is impeccable, whether it's the ice baths, whether it's the stretching, whether it's the massage, whether it's the gluten-free diet, whether it's the fluids. To me, Djokovic is the ultimate professional. I see him around the locker room, I see him around the practice courts, I know his team really well, and to see how well they manage him, it's no wonder he's #1 in the world by a big margin. And that's the beautiful part. He's coming up against some of the great players of our time. You've got Roger Federer still there. You've got an Andy Murray still there. You've got a Rafa Nadal, even though he slipped, still there. You've got the young brigade coming up with Dimitrov and Kyrgios and all these youngsters coming up at him. And still to go out there and create such a big gap in the rankings where he's so far ahead of the pack, to me that's a thorough profession.
And do you put it down to the fact that he has this, you say it's a team, but it is very much about the teams these days. We were talking to Wojciech Feedback actually at the French Open, and he was saying the best teams out there are Roger's team and Novak's team. But it was very much almost like talking about Formula One cars that had all this sort of big team around them. But is it very much like that out there on the tour then, do you think?
Does it have to be?
Now that's a great question. I grew up learning the Swedish way. I saw how you had so many Swedish players. You had 11 or 12 of y'all, and I can name every one of y'all because I love learning from you guys. You all traveled together as a pack. When the Swedish Davis Cup team went together, you guys were invincible. Everyone else trembled. When the Swedish pack went to a Grand Slam, you all lived together, ate together, practiced together, spoke together. You all were always together back in the day. Today, tennis has become more of an isolated sport, more of an individual sport, more of entourages, more each one does their own individual thing. So if you look at a Sharapova's team, brilliant. You look at a Serena Williams team, brilliant. It was so intriguing yesterday. I was watching Venus Williams play against Serena Williams, and they both have completely separate teams. Two sisters growing up in the same environment, in the same house, in the same culture of tennis, but yet completely different teams, completely different results. To me, I find that the modern sport, whether it's Formula One racing, whether it is tennis, whether it is even in team sport like soccer or football as we call it, individual athletes have different teams. And that's just the way modern sport is going. So I've always believed that the trophy has our names, individual names on it. But actually in brackets, it should put every single human being's name part of that team. Because they're the ones behind the scenes who make us who we are. And for me to continue playing for 26 years, it's to honor my team that have been with me for about 23, 24 my respectively.
How big is your team?
I've got about 4 people in my team. Yes,
really?
I do.
That's
My coach has been with me 19 years. My fitness trainer in Florida has been with me 16 years, Dave Herman. Sanjay Singh, my travel companion, has been with me for 24 years. He does my yoga, my stretching, my strings, my rackets. He gets me in shape. He's learned from my fitness trainer when we go into the gym on the road to keep that going. And my father, he's an Olympian. He played in '72 in Munich. He won a bronze medal in field hockey. For me, he's been my biggest support. For me, he's been my guru, my confidant, my dad, and my best friend. I love playing the Olympics because of my parents. They've taught me a lot, and I'm very blessed to have them.
Wow, fantastic.
It's a great story.
I love the fact you do yoga as well. I'm a big, passionate yoga fan. What's your favourite yoga pose?
I like the cobra. It keeps that same core that Martina was talking about, keeping those muscles tight. I like to stretch
stretches
them,
the back.
keep the spine loose.
Okay.
At our age, we need to keep that loose.
That's for sure.
So what's your favourite yoga pose? Not sure.
Let's see. No.
Downward dog.
I like the 8-iron.
Downward dog.
Yeah,
That's a good stretch.
No, I
that
like
8-iron.
the 8-iron.
Beautiful.
It's good. I like the 8-iron.
Left-handed, do you, Mats? You play golf left-handed?
I am a left-handed golfer, yes.
Wow, that double-handed backhand comes to use, doesn't it?
It's going to pay the bills for a long time, Leander.
Well, before we let you go, we've got to ask you for some predictions on these championships, because we're down to the last 8 now. Obviously, the women's is in the quarterfinals today, men's tomorrow. Who do you think is going to be holding that trophy, or both trophies at the end?
You know, I was very interested in that Anderson and Djokovic match because my prediction is Djokovic is going to win the singles.
Okay.
That's just to see him recover and the way he gets ready for every single match, the way he prepares for every single match. Roger's looking hot. Roger's looking good. He's looking smooth.
Yeah.
But I think that Djokovic is, especially after losing the French Open, has got a point to prove.
Yeah, and then
and
the
on
ladies?
the women's side, Serena all the way.
Yeah.
Azarenka's had a few chances against her. She's had a chance against her in Rome, where she served for the match, or rather in Madrid, where she served for the match. A few double faults came in.
3 in a row.
So at the French Open, she had her in trouble, and again didn't close out. I think it's a bit of a mental thing for me, Serena Williams.
Okay, fantastic. And you're in quarterfinal action tomorrow?
In quarterfinal action, yes.
Well, very, very best of luck. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us in the studio. And thank you so much for coming to talk to us. I hope you come back and visit again.
Thank you.
Thank you.